Steven, welcome to Dundee Football Club. How does it feel to be the new head coach of the club?
Yeah, I'm really proud, really honoured. It was a quick turnaround. It was an opportunity that I just couldn't turn down. I spoke to a number of people regarding the club. It's a truly great historical club, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity for myself.
What was the big things that attracted you to the football club?
I think, like any job, the most important factor is alignment. And what John and Gordon have as a vision for this football club was very much aligned to I suppose, my strengths as a coach and as a manager. And I think that was an important aspect. There was very much a belief in player development, about developing the players in a certain way, about the way they see the team functioning. And just about my focus in general. I know there's been the change of title around the manager and the head coach. It very much suits me. It allows me to focus on what I enjoy, which is working with the players, working with the footballing staff, and hopefully growing the club organically in that way.
John mentioned that when you met, you were with him for over 4 hours. He said you had a conversation where you just really aligned in so many things. Did you just get a really good feeling from that conversation?
I did. And again, I've been in football now the best part of 35 years, and throughout that time I've made some good choices and some poor choices. And the one thing you should always do is learn from your mistakes. And one of the things, as I mentioned there, is alignment. It's absolutely pivotal. It's so important that when you come into the club that you're going to work in a manner and work with people that have the same sort of vision for the club as you do.
It's been a number of years since you've been in the dugout as sort of the role of head coach. Why is now the right time to get back into that role? Good question.
Listen, when I reflect on my career after football, probably it's a little bit back to front in the sense that I almost went from playing immediately into management without doing really the foundational work, and very much having to learn on the job. And after a period of 10 years involved in management, I felt it was time to educate myself further and come out of that position. And I spent 4 terrific years at Brentford, really great educational years for me. But I didn't just learn in terms of the football. I've also done a degree in strategic leadership that I also value greatly. And all of this combined, I think, has whetted my appetite to put my learning back into practice. So I just felt this was the right time, the right juncture in my career, and I keep talking about it, the right opportunity. It just felt that this was an opportunity that I couldn't turn down. So I just think the timing was right.
You said you learnt a lot over the last 4 years at Brentford. What do you think are the big things you've taken away from that?
So there's a lot that, I think there's a real calmness about that club. The way they manage, the way they look at things, the way they evaluate. I think planning around everything you do is vitally important. I think they've got clear strategies, clear ways that they want to move the club forward. And of course, very skilled individuals in certain areas of the club that obviously I have had the opportunity to learn from. So there's so many good things around that club. And also, the one most important thing that we tend to forget, but for me it's the foundation of any club, is the culture of the club. And I think I get a good feeling already about the culture here, and obviously I want to help grow that culture, but it's pivotal. We can talk about all the tactical details, all the growth detail, but really the most important thing is that culture.
The last time you managed in Scotland was at Falkirk back in 2013. Do you think you've changed a lot since then?
I've changed a lot, yeah. In reflection, when I went down to Coventry 12 years ago, I went down there with this huge ego. You know, I was determined I was going to transform English football, and through some real learnings, some real failings, some real difficulties, some real opportunities, some growth, you know, I return, I believe, with a very small ego, and I return a far more educated person, a more understanding person, and I'd say a far more authentic person. So, you know, you'll see a different Steven Pressley, I'm sure.
You've arrived in Dundee today for the first time. You've been taken around the training facilities. What's your initial thoughts of the place? Very
good, very positive. You know, coming from a Premier League club, the level of facility there is of an incredible standard at this moment. But the one thing I'll say about Dundee at present, they're showing real ambition. This is a great foundation to build from. I went up and looked at the pitches. There's a lot of work getting done on the pitches around this place. I think they've grown the club exceptionally well, and I think they're developing the infrastructure in a really positive manner.
Is your plan to bring in your own coaching staff? What about an assistant head coach?
Yeah, you know, I think, interestingly enough, that Neil McFarlane, who has been pretty much my all-time assistant, he's also at Brentford. He's the head coach with Brentford B, but he's at a juncture in his career where probably he's looking to become a head coach, and because of that, I'm going to have to change and adapt. But I'm very clear about what I want from a head coach, and I also look at guys like Sir Alec, who regularly changed his assistant coach, and I think it's important, one, that I'm clear about the skill set of that person, but two, I'm very open-minded. I want to bring somebody in with good ideas that can challenge the staff, because I think that that's vitally important for the club to grow.
The club have a lot of young players here. Is that something that attracted you to the role?
Yeah, I think when you look at the club over recent seasons, they've very much developed their own. I think the connection with the supporters is really important for that. You know, when I was at Falkirk and when I was at Coventry, it was very much the case that we developed from within. But they're doing a terrific job here. You know, Gordon, along with Stephen Wright, have done incredible work within the academy, and then of course Scotty with the development group is doing some wonderful work as well. So there's a lot of great foundations in place, and I'm fortunate enough to come in here at this time.
John mentioned in an interview last week, you know, development being a core value of the club. Obviously that's an area you've worked in the past 4 years, so do you think that's a real big thing, that you and the club are aligned in that topic of development?
Yeah, and I've learned a great deal in that role. You know, I was 4 years at Brentford working as first team head of individual development. It gave me a great insight and understanding of player development. It also allowed me to connect with young players, to understand young players better. You know, often when you've been a player and then you go into management, you forget how difficult it is to be a player. There's so many challenges, you know, so many disappointments, so much vulnerability in that role, and it's important that the coach understands that and can relate to the players, and I think that that's a vital part. You know, obviously you want to help them technically, but from a psychological aspect, it's important that the manager understands how it is to be a football player.
Yesterday the club announced the signing of Paul Digby and Dre Wright, more experienced players. Is it about getting that balance between experience and the young players?
Without doubt. I think when you're on the journey that we're on, you're always walking that tightrope. And you know, as a reference before, you know, I had that at both Falkirk and Coventry. And to be honest with you, at Coventry I learnt some really harsh lessons. You know, we went from having a relatively good balance in the team, and we were having relative success, to then the shift being too much on development players, and as a result we struggled, and as a result I lost my job, and understandably so. So I've got real lessons and real understanding of the importance of the balance in that. So, you know, I spoke to John about that. We're very conscious of that aspect, and I think Our most recent signings, as you've referenced there, are two players with good experience that can provide our younger players with real stability.
As head coach, what can we expect from your style of play? What can the fans expect to see?
Well, I know that managers like to explain that you'll be playing in a certain style. The one thing that I will say is that we'll work on very clear principles. We'll have a real understanding as a team of our framework. But within that, I want a team that is really adaptable, that plays what the game needs at that moment. That yes, we can be patient in our build-up, but yes, we can go behind, yes, we can go direct. We have to be a team that asks questions of the opposition. So I think we have to be very adaptable in our style. And at times, in certain games, we'll have to be more pragmatic. So I want to be a coach that can play in many different ways, is adaptable, and at times unpredictable.
Going into the upcoming season, what are your targets and objectives for the club here?
Well, I think in speaking with John, he spoke about the budget and the targets, and the target is very much top six. I'm aware of that. It's a challenge. The margins in Scotland with many of the sides are so slim, but we have to have that aspiration. We have to have that drive, and we have to take on that responsibility and try to deliver.
The players come back for pre-season on Wednesday. Are you really looking forward to that and meeting up with the players for the first time?
I am. It's been a while since I've had to experience this, but I'm very much looking forward to it. It's the part of the job that I really enjoy. I really enjoy that relationship with the players, connecting with the players, and also getting to know the staff within this building. I'm really excited by the job. I've got to say, I've been working hard, educating myself, learning a great deal for this moment, and I just really hope that I can make the Dundee supporters very proud of their team.
We mentioned the signings of Paul and Dre. Obviously, we know there'll be other signings coming in during the transfer window. Is this an exciting opportunity, for a fresh start and for you to really build something here?
Well, I hope so. And then, we look at the recruitment process, and again, I talk about the head coach to the manager, and we've got a very collaborative approach at this football club, which I like, which I think is very important. There's a number of us discuss the player recruitment. We've obviously got Billy Kirkwood in that area, heading it up, and I think it's a good model that we have in place. It allows me to not be distracted all the time by recruitment and very much focus on the development of the team and the individual, and I like the setup.
Do you think that's one way the game's changed over a number of years? You used to have your manager, but now we're seeing definitely more in England as well, a head coach. Do you think the game's really changed?
Yeah, I think now that the demands and what's expected of a head coach in terms of game prep, in terms of individual development, team development, analysis, all of those areas has grown massively over the period. And I think now that it's important that he's not distracted, but equally, we must respect there's skill sets to each individual, and if you've got somebody with a particular skill set in recruitment, his ability to identify players often is much better than that of the manager. That doesn't mean that the manager's not involved in the process, of course, but I think you have to also respect other people's skill sets and trust other people's skill sets, and we do that here. And I think that that's now very common, not only in England but in Europe as well.
We've got a month until the League Cup campaign starts. We start with Airdrie at home. Is that something that you want to start well with in the League Cup group stages?
Of course. For clubs like Dundee, history will tell you to win the league is very, very difficult. But cup competitions give us a real opportunity to bring the club success, and I would love to be part of that. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We've got a lot of work to do, both on recruitment, but in terms of development of the team, that will take some time. But cup competitions present a real opportunity for this club, and we have to be prepared for that.
And just lastly, what would be your message to the Dundee supporters?
Not anything major other than they've got a manager that's going to apply himself, that's really excited by the job here, that's very proud to represent their football club, and I'll be working tirelessly with my staff to make a team that they're proud of.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Steven.
Thank you.